us about the tax plan as you know it. What would you like to see today? What do you think is realistic?
Well, we're going to find out details later today, but some of the early details are encouraging. I think the principles that should govern tax reform are growth, fairness, and simplicity. Number one should be growth. The focus should be jobs and economic growth. And I think there are a lot of elements that we're hearing that are encouraging in that regard.
So what gets you there? I mean, a 20% corporate tax rate, good news. 28% pass-through, good news. On the individual front, 12, 25, 35. Do you want that? Will you vote for that?
Look, I'd like to see those rates lower. I'd like to see one simple flat tax. That's what I campaigned on, as you know, in the presidential race. It's what I have encouraged my colleagues to go. If we don't end up having the votes now to go there, going from 7 rates to 3 is a positive step. Going from 3 to 2 is even better. Going from 2 to 1 is even better. I think simplicity and it being low is important. I also think for individuals, being able to fill out your taxes on a postcard has a powerful, powerful impact of simplicity. We spend about 9 billion hours a year in tax compliance. That's an easy save. But I'll tell you, one of the first questions we're going to debate in Congress and with the administration is how big of a tax cut are we talking about? And this matters. I think it needs to be a tax cut, an unapologetic tax cut, a serious tax cut, and the simplest reason. If you want to see Reagan-era economic growth, if you want to see booming GDP, small businesses growing, you've got to have Reagan-style tax cuts, real tax cuts, not just deficit neutral, adjusting, emptying one bucket and filling another. You got to have a real tax cut on small businesses, on job producers, on working families. That's how we unleash the economy.
We've been talking about that this morning. I'm going to get the guys in right now because I'm glad you said unapologetic. Because I said to one of your colleagues earlier in the House, you got bullied again. You keep getting bullied by the left. We knew today the big headline from the left would be this is a tax cut for the rich. And yet, now, when we thought the highest rate would be 35%, now there's this buzz in the air about a millionaire's tax, which would take the highest earners up to 39%. Will you vote no on that?
Look, we're going to have extensive negotiations. We're not close to this passing. It's going to take at least a couple of months to hash it out and try to get to consensus. I believe we will get it done. I think we've got to get it done. But it's going to take some time. This is being unveiled right now. This is one proposal. In the Senate, as you know, we've got a very narrow majority, 52 Republicans. We got to get at least 50 to support it, and so there's going to be a lot of give and take. I think if we focus on growth, simplicity, fairness, that's how we get 50 together.
Senator, to Maria's point, the Republican Party has been talking for a long time about 3 tax brackets. It sounds like the plan that comes out today is going to say 3 tax brackets, but maybe a 4th tax bracket that hits the highest earning households. Can you get behind a tax plan with 4 brackets instead of 3?
Look, I'm not going to engage in sort of debating hypotheticals, and during the whole course of this, there's going to be all sorts of proposals, and I think it's a bad idea for anyone to begin by drawing lines in the sand and saying, I won't support tax reform unless X, Y, Z. Whatever passes at the end of the day, it's going to be less than 100% of what everyone wants. That's just the nature of particularly a very narrow majority. But the direction that I have been pushing and will continue to push is bold and simple, that we can really have an enormous impact. Let me give you an example. One of the most pro-growth reforms that can be included in tax reform is immediate expensing of capital expenditures. When businesses spend money, when a farmer spends money to buy a tractor, he can expense that immediately instead of depreciating it over years.
This is a huge idea.
It's a massive idea. When a steel factory opens up a new factory, builds a new factory, or a plastics factory buys new equipment to hire new workers, immediately expensing is an enormous incentive for dollars spent here to create heavy manufacturing jobs, to create jobs, the kind of blue-collar jobs that have been the backbone of the American economy for decades. That's a big deal. I think it's important to have it in there. That debate is going back and forth. Some see this as a trade-off between expensing and lowering the corporate rate. And so you get, for example, folks in the financial services sector, some of those lobbyists are saying, oh, don't worry about expensing, just lower the rate. Well, that makes sense in financial services where you're not having big capital expenditures on equipment and heavy machinery.
But not for a farmer.
But not for a farmer, not for a rancher, not for the men and women who elected Donald Trump, though the working class. And the answer, I agree lowering the corporate rate's important. Do them both. Make it a real tax cut, really unleash the economy, and we can see tremendous results.
Senator, we just blew past not that long ago $20 trillion in the national debt. There are going to be folks in this town, ironically, a lot of Democrats all of a sudden, who are going to be talking about deficits. And conservatives are concerned about deficits. Are you guys willing to go really big on tax cuts, even if it's not deficit neutral?
Absolutely, and this is critical. If it's not deficit neutral, it's not a tax cut. And look, one of the things to remember, the way Washington scores tax cuts, they consistently underestimate the economic growth impact of tax cuts.
Like the dynamic scoring.
That's exactly right. One of the reasons I am such a passionate advocate for a big, serious tax cut is because I'm very worried about the deficit and debt. And the only way we're going to turn it around is economic growth. There is no way Congress is going to find the backbone to cut enough to get out of the debt. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen with Democrats. It's not even going to happen with most Republicans. The only way we get out of this hole that we've dug ourselves is getting out of the anemic Obama-era 1% and 2% growth, getting back to robust 3, 4, 5% GDP growth. That generates so much revenue that's how you end up paying down the deficit.
So you could go into this thinking, okay, it's not going to be revenue neutral because growth is going to happen.
That's exactly right. And if we want to start paying down the debt, the only way to do it, since World War II, our economy's grown on average 3.3% a year. From 2008 to today, it's grown 1.2% a year. I mean, this is dismal, it's miserable, and I'll tell you, a lot of people in Washington are accepting this as the new normal. Now we grow 1% to 2% a year. Well, prior to Obama, the last 4-year period where you had economic growth less than 1% was 1978 to 1982. It was Jimmy Carter coming right out of the same failed economic policies. And what did Reagan do? In '81, he came in with a major tax cut, major regulatory reform. The economy took off. Guy, do you know what GDP growth was in '84?
I'm guessing
5%?
4 or 5%?
7.2.
Wow.
I mean, those are China-level numbers. 7.2, nobody's even imagining that's possible. Well, Reagan produced it, and he did it because he wasn't timid. He wasn't scared of his own shadow. He knew the Democrats would demagogue him. On any tax cut, they're going to scream tax cuts for the rich. You know what? Under Ronald Reagan, working men and women, their wages went up. Under Ronald Reagan, African Americans saw significant increases in their annual income. Hispanics saw significant increases. If you want people to rise the economic ladder, you need the economy growing. You need small businesses going. A big tax cut's the way to do that.
Go bold.
Senator, what do you say? You use the word dismal to the dismal scientists out there, the economists who say that we can't get to 3% growth because the population is aging and because productivity growth is very low. What do you say to those people who say that the environment now isn't what it was in the 1980s when inflation was coming down and interest rates were coming down? Now interest rates are going up.
To quote a voice from the past, I think they are nattering nabobs of negativism. I think they don't know what they're talking about. Every voice in Washington who says, accept mediocrity, accept that we have to become, like much of Europe, stagnant state socialism, that is utter nonsense. This economy, we can unleash incredible growth, but the key to it is small businesses. It's not, Washington focuses so much on the big guys, on the major companies and the lobbyists. That's who has stroke in this town. Yeah. I'll tell you who I care about. I care about the little guy, the small businesses, because 2/3 of all new jobs in the economy come from small businesses.
Right, which is why that 25% pass-through rate is really important. So you like that rate? Is that the rate to go with?
It's a step in the right direction. I'm going to keep pushing for more, simpler, stronger, better. By the way, one very important piece to have as part of this tax reform debate. I think we should use tax reform as the opportunity also to repeal Dodd-Frank. Democrats will filibuster any attempt to do so, which means the only possibility of repealing Dodd-Frank is doing it on budget reconciliation at the same time.
Attach it.
Attach it to tax reform. And the reason that matters, as you know, Dodd-Frank has decimated the smaller banks, the community banks, the credit unions.
Well, that's why you got 1% growth.
And that's what provides capital to small businesses. If you care about small businesses, you want capital, you want less regulations, less taxes, and getting rid of Dodd-Frank would help fuel we would be having a very different conversation 1 year, 2 years from now if we're looking at 3, 4, 5% GDP
By the way,
growth.
the Dems want to attach an infrastructure plan to this. You know that. Real quick before you go, Senator, health care.
Yeah.
You've been trying to get to a yes.
Yes.
Are you a yes?
Well, I am a yes on repealing Obamacare.
Okay, I know that. Are you a yes on Graham Cassidy or not?
Right now, Graham Cassidy's been pulled. So I don't know what the vehicle is going to be, but we have to get this done. We have to honor our promise to repeal Obamacare, and I am spending every waking moment on Obamacare and tax reform trying to unite Republicans.
Senator Ted Cruz, that's why we love you. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.